The room goes dark. A single spotlight cuts through the silence. On stage, a figure in a black turtleneck, or its modern equivalent, paces slowly, deliberately. Behind them, a massive screen glows to life. Words appear.
Which is
Magical.
phenomenal.
Revolutionary.
It works like magic.
The most powerful iPhone we've ever created. The audience leans forward. Every slide is polished. Every sentence rehearsed. Every pause engineered. This isn't just a product launch. It's theater. It's ritual. And somewhere along the way, Apple stopped selling devices and started selling belief. But cut the music. Strip away the narration. Look closer. The revolution starts to feel familiar. The same rectangle. The same camera bump. Marginally thinner. Slightly faster. Marketed as a leap forward. Delivered as an incremental step. The era of world-changing hardware, the iPod, the iPhone, didn't end with a bang. It faded. Quietly. Systematically. Replaced not by invention, but by iteration. Because Apple today isn't built on breakthroughs. It's built on control. And at the center of that transformation is not a designer, not an engineer, but an operator. Tim Cook. A man who doesn't obsess over pixels, but over pipelines. Not product curves, but cost curves. Under his leadership, Apple became something far more powerful than a tech company. It became a logistical empire, one that moves millions of units across continents with military precision, squeezing margins at every node of the global supply chain. And while the world was distracted, waiting for one more thing, Apple built something else. A system. A closed loop. A walled garden so seamless, so convenient, that leaving it feels unthinkable. Every app, every subscription, every transaction quietly taxed, 30%, siphoned invisibly. Not enforced with force, but with design. This isn't just an ecosystem, it's infrastructure, financial, digital, psychological. This is the illusion of magic, the performance of innovation masking a machine of extraction, a company once defined by rebellion, now perfected in control. Welcome to the blueprint. Steve Jobs built Apple like an artist, obsessed with form, intuition, and the emotional pull of a product. He stood on stage and bent reality with vision. Tim Cook does the opposite. No spectacle, no distortion field, just numbers. Before he was CEO, Cook was an industrial engineer, a specialist in constraints, throughput, and optimization. Where Jobs saw the product, Cook saw the system behind it. Inventory cycles, supplier lead times, cost curves. Jobs made Apple desirable. Cook made it unstoppable. Cook's first move wasn't to design a better product. It was to dismantle the factory. In the late 90s, Apple still manufactured much of its own hardware, tying up billions in assets and inventory. Cook saw dead weight. He shut it down. Entire production lines, gone. In their place, he built a network, a distributed machine stretching across Asia, anchored by contractors like Foxconn. Apple would no longer build iPhones. It would orchestrate them. But outsourcing wasn't about delegation. It was about leverage. Apple became so large, so essential, that suppliers didn't negotiate. They complied. Apple didn't just order components. It financed and dictated the machines that made them. Precision tooling, custom equipment, often paid for by Apple, installed in supplier factories, and used exclusively for Apple products. In return, suppliers accepted razor-thin margins, locked into contracts where a single misstep could cost them everything. Apple captured the upside. Everyone else absorbed the risk. The result is a system that borders on financial engineering. Apple operates on a near-perfect just-in-time model. Inventory is minimized to the edge of non-existence. A device is assembled in China, loaded onto a container ship, flown or shipped across continents, and sold, often before Apple has even paid the manufacturer. Cash flows in before cash flows out. It's not just efficient, it's asymmetric. This is Cook's real innovation, not a new product category, but a machine. One that doesn't need to reinvent the iPhone every year. It just needs to shave 1% off production costs, and add 5% to the price. At scale, that delta becomes billions. And that's how Apple stopped being a tech company and became the most efficient cash extraction system on Earth. Apple's greatest product isn't the iPhone, it's the system around it. In economics, there's a term for this: vendor lock-in. But Apple doesn't present it as a constraint. It feels like magic. You buy an iPhone. Your AirPods connect instantly. Your Apple Watch unlocks your Mac. Your photos appear everywhere, automatically. Each interaction is frictionless, almost invisible. But that's the point. Individually, these are devices. Together, they form a closed loop, a self-reinforcing ecosystem designed not just for convenience, but for retention. And then there's Apple's most subtle and most powerful weapon, iMessage. On the surface, it's just a messaging app, but beneath it, it's a social sorting system. Blue bubbles signal belonging. Green bubbles signal exclusion. For over a decade, Apple refused to fix cross-platform messaging. And even when regulators recently forced them to improve it, Apple deliberately kept the green bubbles, because that small visual difference creates something far more valuable than a feature: pressure. Teenagers notice it. Friend groups enforce it. Entire social circles quietly reorganize around it. Step outside the system, and the experience changes. Sharing files becomes clumsy. Photos lose quality. Accessories disconnect or never fully integrate. Moving data out of iCloud feels like extracting something buried deep. Slow, fragmented, incomplete. Passwords resist export. Services degrade. None of it is explicitly blocked. It's just difficult. Friction, carefully engineered. And over time, that friction compounds. Years of photos, purchased apps, subscriptions, contacts, messages, all layered into one account, one identity. Leaving isn't just switching phones, it's unwinding a digital life, a process so tedious, so socially costly, that most people don't even consider it. So when the next iPhone launches, the decision isn't really about innovation. It's about inertia. The cost of leaving, financial, technical, social, is simply too high. This isn't loyalty. It's dependency. A system where the easiest choice is to stay. Once Apple sealed the ecosystem, the next move was inevitable: control the gate. The App Store isn't just a marketplace. It's the only sanctioned entry point into a billion-pocket economy. Every app, every update, every in-app purchase must pass through a single checkpoint. Apple doesn't need to compete with developers. It doesn't need to out-innovate them. It just owns the road they have to travel. And at the center of that road sits a toll booth. Then comes the number: 30%. For years, that's the price of admission. A flat, non-negotiable cut on digital goods and subscriptions sold inside the ecosystem. Apple didn't build Spotify's streaming engine. It didn't finance Netflix's productions. It didn't design the worlds inside Fortnite. And yet, at the moment of transaction, Apple reaches in and removes up to a third of the revenue, simply because it can. Not a partnership, not a service fee, a tax. Scale that across 1 billion users, across millions of apps, across every subscription renewal happening silently in the background, and the numbers become surreal. Tens of billions of dollars. Not from building products, but from taxing them. The App Store operates like a sovereign economy, with margins so high they resemble software, but powered by control. It's passive income at planetary scale, a system where money flows continuously, predictably, automatically, upward. But systems like this don't go unchallenged forever. The developers who built fortunes inside Apple's walls have started to question the cost of staying there. Epic Games took the fight public, breaking the rules, triggering a legal war. Governments followed. Regulators in the European Union began drafting laws designed to pry open the gate itself. The Digital Markets Act. Antitrust investigations. Courtrooms replacing keynote stages. The toll booth is still standing, but for the first time, the barrier is shaking. Apple was once the insurgent, the company that challenged giants, rejected convention, and bent technology into something human. But that version of Apple is gone. Under Tim Cook, it didn't collapse. It evolved into something colder, more precise, a system optimized not for breakthroughs, but for dominance. They didn't just build products. They engineered an environment so seamless, so polished, that 1 billion people walked in willingly and never left. This is the final form of a monopoly in the modern age. Not loud, not aggressive, invisible. When innovation slows, extraction begins. You stop chasing the future and start owning the present. Apple doesn't need to reinvent the iPhone every year. It already owns the infrastructure of your digital life, the apps you use, the services you pay for, the ecosystem you depend on. And from that position, it does something far more powerful than selling products. It charges rent. And Apple isn't alone. This is the blueprint. The moment a company realizes that optimizing margins is more predictable than inventing the future, the shift begins. Engineers step back. Accountants step forward. Decisions stop being about possibility and start being about percentages. Efficiency replaces ambition. Control replaces risk. And slowly, quietly, entire industries begin to stagnate. Because what happened to Apple is not an exception. It's a pattern. One that has already played out before, on a much larger scale. If you want to see what happens when an entire industry lets spreadsheets dictate engineering decisions, when innovation is sacrificed for short-term margins, and how that led to losing a $1 trillion war in the electric vehicle market, watch my full breakdown of how accountants destroyed the Western auto industry